쏟아지는 걸 이유 없이 쏟아지는 걸 아무도 모르죠 심장 속에 유리조가 폭풍이 몰아치는 걸 상처가 병이 돼서 모든 문이 벽이 돼서 거울 속에 내가 적이 돼서 아프죠 아무도 그대 모르게 가두고 숨을 조르게 놔두고 끝을 모르게 만들죠 이 세상 속에서 이유 없었죠 돌아갈 길은 선택도 없이 마냥 걷겠죠 내 맘보다 그대 숨이 먼저 먹겠죠
Hello. Welcome to K-Talk. This is Jeannie Chang. So glad to see you guys. So I have with me, I just had to share all these magazines that I got from Seoul. You know, these, okay, I have this with me and this. And then, of course, these and this one. So I'm showing them off because they're very much coveted now. Everyone wants one, and we have 4, and this is my favorite one. This is Pyeonusuk from Lovely Runner, and they are right here keeping my table all fun. So thanks for being here, guys. It has been a while since I've done it. Also, I want to share, I have these. So let me show my Festa because I haven't seen you guys since Festa. You know, all of these are fun and they're cute and people are wondering what's the purpose of these. But you know what? These are all memorabilia and they're cute, but they do make a difference. I realize it's kind of cute to see stuff like this and, you know, like this in your office. Do you know what I mean? And the only place I can think of is Korea that actually has different magazine covers for the same magazine. You know what I mean? This is Harper's Bazaar, and you guys know this was all over because he's the latest thing, you know, under the sun. So anyways, those are, I just want to start with my welcome with the fun stuff I brought back because we're slowly unpacking. And then this was also, I found this recently because when you're unpacking and then you're going back and forth to Korea, I don't always fully unpack. So I have this as well. Okay, guys, here's some updates for you. And this is obviously, if you guys, a lot of folks couldn't join live, they did DM me, but I'm telling you now that you can rewatch this. I want to say that there's so many updates to share. First of all, I'm going to be coming to a city near you in Texas, Houston and Austin, but also in Atlanta. So there's many more cities, and a lot of questions I got are you going to come to here, or, you know, over here? And you know what? I can't make it everywhere only because it's based on an organized event. So I could show up at a cafe, but that wouldn't be as, I guess, productive in my time. So it's matters of the organization wanting to host and reaching out to me, if that makes sense. So for now, it's Houston, Texas, because I'm speaking at a convention. Also I will be in LA, more for family and work related things. And also I have a board retreat there because I sit on a board of a national mental health organization. And then I'll be in Austin, Texas. And I will actually post that graphic soon of where I'll be in Austin, Texas. And then I'll be headed to Atlanta. And I'll be in Atlanta over a period of 3 days doing a bunch of events where you can check me out. So yes, still promoting the book and then also trying to get some rest before I head back to Seoul in early September. So San Diego. So I was already in San Diego, but I didn't do an organized event there, but I will be in LA. So I guess we can so San Diego is one of my clients, but as of now, no, except I will be in Los Angeles. So I'll keep you posted. It's, again, if folks who missed it, it's hard for me to come to your city unless there is an organized event. It's just easier that way because I could speak and then I have the books on hand to do a book signing. So that's how it happens. So let me know if you do want me to come. Maybe we can get an organization to host me in San Diego. I'm there pretty often at the University of California, San Diego. So I would love to come back because there's some folks on the tour from San Diego. So that said, welcome. Now, I also want to share an update on the tours. So you guys know that we have K-drama and K-pop tours now, 2025. After today, it will be officially open to the public, which is super exciting. And what's surprising, I'm going to share this, is I thought fall would actually, people would book later, but There is more, obviously, spring signups for sure. Spring is definitely going much more quicker, but it's really neat to see people signing up for our final tours in 2025, which is over a year away. And so that's exciting. And yes, we have new categories, as in tours for BTS Army. So that's specifically what I mean by K-pop tours. And then Seoul and Jeju tours. We're going to be going to Jeju Island. That is, yes, a K-drama tour, of course. And then we also have the classic multi-city tours, which at this point are, I would say, will sell out first in the spring. So that's always exciting. And stay tuned. There will be more tours. These are my classic Noona's Noonchi tours, but there are also other collaborations in the works, because I'm really excited about having different tours available to you guys, right? And it's just great to see the expansion of our company. But the ones we've announced, I will be on those. And there may be some others that will announce that I will not be on those. So those that we announced, I'm on them. Now, I do want to share this really, really special story. And I hope the person, I don't know if she's here, hears this, but got reached out to, and this is just a glimpse of the stories from our tours, that a company reached out to us, or a company representative reached out to us before 2025 tours went live, saying, we want to purchase a package because we have somebody at our organization who's retiring, and it's our gift to this person because she's been wanting to go on your tours. I mean, I saw that and I went, that's so special. I mean, still to want to retire and say, I would love to go on one of Noona's Noonchi tours. And so that's one thing, to want that. But the other thing is to actually, that the company purchases a tour. And so this person will be celebrating. I mean, by then it'll be like, I don't know, 6 months into her retirement, but still celebrating retirement with a gift from her company. So I'm just telling you guys, that could be a gift from your company if you ever wanted to say, by the way, can you purchase me a tour package? And what a great gift. So I just share that. And I feel very blessed that this person will be on our tour, and it's, provided by her company as she leaves. And that's just a beautiful token of love, right? Jung and belongingness. Okay. So I'm going to move on, but that is the main updates for now. More updates obviously coming your way, but the book and the tours consume me in between all my speaking. Updates, let's move on to the questions you guys have. You guys asked some great questions. Again, this is recorded, so you'll be able to see my answers to your questions. I had to pick and choose. I can't answer every question. Actually, we got quite a few very insightful questions that I want to take my time to answer later. And you might see that, and then I'll definitely call them out saying, this person gave this question to me, and this is why I'm answering it like this. So the first question, let's go to the first question that you guys asked. Can you share some of your best parenting tips? I did want to share this because I think it's important. That's a big part of my journey as a parent. And we see so many examples of good and bad parenting in K-dramas. And let's also start there too, because you're going to see some good and bad examples of everything. As much as we love our K-dramas, it's good to see the toxicness. And actually that's what people see and go, oh my gosh, I don't want my relationship like that. So I guess the best parenting tip is, first of all, we're not perfect and we're going to make mistakes, but I think it's really important. And I could tell you what to do, but I actually would prefer telling you to look within yourself first. Meaning if you're aware of something and you're being a certain way, or whether it's being too hard, or whether it's being too pushy or not hard enough, because there's quite a few parents that tell me they need to discipline more, then I want you to work on that, because you have to figure out in your own way what kind of parent you're being or what kind of parent you're not being, Good morning. Thanks for joining. I'm talking about parenting. And I think it's really important you may want to teach your kids things. And I say this because this is hard for me too, but you can't teach them things if you're like doing all the wrong things, right? As you're teaching them. So I think parents actually need to still be the adult first and look inside of them of what they're struggling with, because whatever you're struggling with, whatever that may be, whether it's conflict with your spouse or partner, conflict with family, your kids see that. So that kind of thing needs to be worked on first and along the way before you actually sit there going, I need to tell my parents thing. That's one of my best parenting tips, meaning you can't be an effective parent when your kid sees you doing one thing and then tells you another. I get that too, where they're like, you just told me this, but then I saw you do this, or I saw you act this way. So parents, we're still individuals first. And so I think it's really important from whatever K-drama you're watching, that triggers you in a certain way to make that change. Do that as your parent. And that's my best parenting tip, because like I said, I if I could talk to each person, I would, to tell you about how you're parenting. But overall, no child, because kids are really smart. They're actually, from babies, will detect your stress. If they see you're one way and then you're all like, oh, everything's good. Actually, that stresses the kid out more. They will know it's not good because they're watching and they feel it, right? They're living with you. You're with them. So I would actually, even if you're trying to protect the child, know that you have to be somewhat authentic. Be like, yeah, it's things right now. We're trying to work some things out. So it might be a little stressful, but don't worry. Then you give them your kind of worry, like we're going to make sure we take care of this. But if you actually say, don't worry, it's all good. It's not stressful, nothing to worry about. There's nothing happening. Because I got that a lot growing up. It's actually a very cultural thing, Korean culture, going, yeah, don't worry about it. No, we're not stressed. It actually made me more stressed as a child. So I'm telling that, putting yourself in your kid's shoes, it's not lying per se, because you have some best intentions, but I think I would do my best to be more authentic about it. So that's my best parenting tip for now, looking within first on what you need to work on. Okay, let's go on to the second one. What changes do Korean people want to see in their country to make it better? This is a tough question, and I don't ask it this way, but I'm always like, so what would you like, what are some things you feel like you want to work on? And, what are some things you wish Korea would do? And I think a lot of the stress boils down to the education, not the system, but maybe how much emphasis is on education. And you guys know that from the K-dramas. And so I hear that. Now, I talk to a lot of adults too that are post-education, but you still face it at your jobs. Wherever you go trickles into your jobs. So I think at the end of the day, the change that folks might want to see is somehow alleviating the pressure on education while not demeaning education. Like, I don't want the country to ever go, by the way, education's not important anymore, go for whatever. No, you still want to emphasize that and that core value, but it's got to be done in a more, I would say, nurturing way, where it's not like the only choice you have. Even if it becomes the main choice because of Korea's system, which does matter. In fact, some folks will say, yeah, where you go even matters to your job hiring. Here in the US, we don't go, hey, where'd you go? They'll see it, but they'll not go, because you went to this school, you will get this job. Not necessarily. It's about work experience. They look at grades. They look at a lot of factors. Korea, it's a little bit more narrow. So I think the shift might happen to be, if you're going to emphasize school, is there a way that you could provide more social support, counselors. There's school counselors, but not necessarily psychological school counselors. We have psychological mental health counselors on school property in the US, in the elementary schools to the high schools. And some of them are very effective. In fact, they'll go right to the parent. We don't have that in Korea. And so they have, I think, psychologists that might be experts at the schools, but not literally on the front lines working with students. And I think that's really important. Now, needless to say, I'm not going to school there, so I can't say everything's a fact. But I think generally speaking, the support system has to be better, and that's the one thing Koreans will say. That is why, in some sense, there are such high rates of self-harm, or suicide, because they don't have that outlet. But if you have an outlet and you still have the high education standards, I feel like that's okay. We can't change the education standards. We want that. But how do you get there? And I think Koreans will say, yeah, there's no maybe HR policies for work people when they need protection. That is what needs to be there. And we do have that pretty good in the US. So let me go on to the next question. Hopefully I answer that. Okay, so that's a good question. Oh, are you Magnolia Mom? Hello. Is it bad? Is it as bad as shown in K-dramas or worse? The education? Again, This is speculation somewhat and what I know of talking to people because I'm not living it. But I want to say this because I don't want to downplay my upbringing. I lived through it in a different way. Korean traditional parents or traditional Korean parents raising me here in the US, I got a glimpse of it. I think it's as bad as we see it. Now, they're also dramatizing it, so I don't think everybody is as evil as they come across, maybe, right? And they, what was I gonna say? It's not as dramatic as we may see it, but the pressure and the intensity and the teachers expecting this and then working late night and going to Hagwon. If you guys saw Midnight Romance in Hagwon, all of that is legit. That's all based on Korean culture. And so I want to say it's the same. I don't think it's worse, but it could be, the worst could come with certain circumstances, meaning there might be some worse schools and worse families that emphasize it so much. If you think of Crash Course in Romance, there was a mom that was kind of crazy, that was, I would say, so detached from reality to get her kids there to the best that she didn't really show any love to the kids. And obviously she changed because it's a K-drama and we want to see that happy ending. But that you tend to see. You also tend to see the dark side. And that is why Midnight Romance and Hagwon, whoever saw it, I can't finish. Like, I'm getting to the romance part and it's good, but the overall arching Hagwon stress is too much for me because I was exposed to it. I didn't actually go to Hagwon per se, but the same intensity of the studying and the same verboseness of moms going, you need to do this, you need to do that. How about this? Let me talk to your teacher. That's all real. And even today, that is why, I'm kind of digressing, the birth rate is declining because of the main stress surrounding education and finances. By the way, you got to have finances to finance education. So I would say it's as bad as you see. It's pretty realistic, ignoring some of the drama of bad people. I don't think that's always the case. The changes I've seen in K-dramas over the years is it is more women empowered. And I think even in the past, it was still written by women, but I think there was just much more male dominance. I don't want to say that word because that sounds bad, but just a lot more male-driven aggressive behavior. You don't see that in the K-dramas today. And it's even more accentuated by showing women CEOs, women maternal matriarchs, right? Running the not only the chaebol families, but running the families, good and bad. Because I saw a glimpse of the Rain K-drama, just the examples of it. I'm like, okay, intense there, And so you see a little bit of the female voice speaking out. That I think it's that's the biggest change I see. And the other changes I've seen over the years is that they're a little bit more. People think they're still tropey. They're less tropey, actually. They still have the same classic concepts, but years ago, decades ago, they were clearly the tropes, and that was the focus. The focus is, let's say, My Sweet Mobster, there's a love triangle. So that's the trope, but that's a trope in many things, but it's not so much the corniness of it all. Does that make sense? They bring in a lot of other things and downplay it, but that's the foundation. If you saw 2010 K-dramas, the trope was all about the trope. This person loves me. This person loves me too. What am I going to do? It was like such an obvious thing where something like now they're like, oh, I don't like you, but I love this person, but thank you for loving me. That kind of thing. And it doesn't consume the character, if that makes sense. And they don't make it a big deal. So that's another change. Another change I've also noticed is overall the language, like the language in their conversations is better. Like, I feel like the writing is better. If you see 10, 15 years ago, I still love watching the old school K-dramas, Secret Garden, my favorite, The Greatest Love, 2011. It still has everything you see now, especially in the actors' emotions and everything, great acting. But the writing is much better today. I feel like in some of the thought-provokingness. You know why? Because more writers today in 2024 are more focused on well-being, wellness, what they know of mental health. Because I say this, not everybody understands mental health, but they'll bring in a lot of that language that you see in current K-dramas that 10, 15 years ago, not maybe even 5 years ago, you wouldn't see them saying. I'm depressed. No, I don't think you don't see that word. You say it, you see it now. Burnout was recent. That's only this year. But so I think the language has shifted and the writing is even better today. And I think that's great, So overall, I like where it's gone, but I want to be clear. I don't want it to shift. When I see Netflix exclusive K-dramas, they have a different feel to them and they're made for Netflix. So in some sense, I feel like it loses a little bit of the tradition. And because I'm old school, so being 50 and Gen X, I think I admit I have that. I want some of the tradition in there. And then I hear from other people that they want it too. But that I don't want to get lost. I don't see it lost, but you'll see it lost in some K-dramas. Very, very select few. But currently today, that's why if you want to watch Vicky, I'm not telling you to get Vicky, but Vicky tends to show the old school classic KBS, SBS dramas that are a little bit outrageous, but they still have that traditional feel. I still like those. What's the most recent one? Like My Familiar Family is on Netflix. But things like My Father is Strange, a really I think a top-rated K-drama was on Viki, and it was like 50 episodes. So that's why they're long, because they're continuing and they're shorter. They're like 30 episodes. So let's not lose the tradition. And then I'm going to share this. Young people have even said, even though they love the dark stuff, like Hierarchy and Netflix was all the talk when I was there just a few weeks ago. So that's why I put a pause on it, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to finish it. But things like that are definitely gaining traction. Young people love that dark stuff because it's entertaining and that kind of grasps the whole Gen Z, MZ feel. But at the end of the day, what are the K-dramas that blow things out of the water, that are seeing massive success in Korea? Lovely Runner, Queen of Tears. It's the dramas that are overall feel good, heartwarming. Like, I'm still studying that trend, but that's what I've seen. Extraordinary Attorney Woo did excellent globally and in Korea, which is actually rare. That's the only one I could think of. Squid Game was more global, believe it or not. Yes, folks liked it in Korea, but it was much more popular globally. Lovely Runner, you guys all love it, but it was super popular in Korea. So it just tells you that overall, the young folks, which is most of the demographic that loves this too, needs that happy-go-lucky feel because things are so bleak in the world too. You know what I mean? So I'm bringing that up because at the end of the day, that's what I think people want. They still want the tropey love and happiness. And people will argue with me going, yeah, but it's so tropey and it's so annoying. I go, it is. But after a while, you go back to that. I guarantee it, Yeah, Vicky has the classics. Okay, let me move on because I'm taking much longer than I thought. Okay, next question. How realistic are the portrayals of societal issues in K-dramas? I think pretty accurate. And that is why the darker ones tend to be popular, because I'm not saying that's realistic. The hierarchy, not so much, but it does speak on, for instance, the hierarchy in schools, but based on social status. Yeah, that does still exist. It existed even when I was growing up in the US. I would feel it when I would go back to Korea and they'd be like, oh, you're from this family. And that still exists today. So that is all realistic. They just dramatize it for the sake of the drama. Like Hierarchy, it's not as dark as maybe The Glory, but shows a little bit about that. Like, we're up here and you guys are here because this is the family I come from. That's realistic. Societal issues like bullying is there. I heard it's not as bad because they're putting much more restrictions on it, thank goodness, but it still exists. And even workplace bullying, nobody hits anymore. You'd be in trouble if you did that, but there's a lot of still verbal things at play that still exist that I hear. And I've heard about it directly, as a therapist, people talking about what it's been like. I myself, as you know, as I talked about in the workplace in the last live, experienced it in a different way. Not so much verbal abuse, right? But you see a lot of the gender inequality, gender dynamics, all still real. But on the flip side of things, you also see more women CEOs in these K-dramas. I do see more of that. I'm like still in awe when I meet a Korean executive female. They're just not talked about in the Korean news. Like the people running these entertainment agencies, they're still predominantly male, but then there's some women at the top that I've gotten to know that are very, 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 very significant in the work they do in K-pop and K-dramas. They're just not talked about. So all of that, as we see more portrayals, I believe they're real. As you see more of those portrayals, there are more and more women at the top. So take that, also take it with a grain of salt, because take out the drama. But those societal issues, yeah, they're still there. Arranged marriages. So arranged marriages sounds a little bit restricting. Not so much my parents were arranged. So they were match made. And yes, that exists, but not in like, you better marry this person or we're going to disown you. More like, this is the person that we would like you to marry and let's discuss it. But I don't think it's so as harsh as we've seen. But yeah, no, I've seen it. I know lots of my friends still sogeting, that's the Korean term of blind dates, definitely still exists. And of course, depending on social status and the family you come from, it's emphasized more. They're like, we need you to marry from this family or this caliber, so we have somebody we know. And my parents still do that, even with some of their friends setting up people. So not so much arranged, like from birth, not like that, but definitely matchmaking is still around. And again, my parents were match made. So I'm going to pause here. I enjoyed Midnight Romance and Hagwon showed the inside dealings of Hagwon's educators on the students' intelligence, interests, educating themselves. Also, like we have to, yeah. And you know what I noticed? A lot more. I want to say this. I think because it was so real to me, the Hagwon life. Like, and I'll be honest, it irritated me. I think I wish I could see it because I love the leads. So if I could take out the romance and just watch the romance, I would. But a lot of those underplaying of the education, I'm glad people find it fascinating, but that's all legit. But that's kind of how I grew up. So it was all about, what are you taking and what do you, let's have you practice. Let's have you play the piano at a family reunion. I mean, that's how stressful it is. So because it's kind of so real to me, it's not my favorite. And so you see me saying that a lot. Sky Castle took me like a year to get through. And I wanted to get through it because it did so well in Korea and it was very well received that I was like, I need to watch this. And so I probably will eventually watch it, but I don't think it's as popular internally in Korea. I think it validates a lot of things, but like Lovely Runner still outweighed everything. By the way, Lovely Runner, when I was there, I would just bring up the topic and you would just see people's faces light up. I'm like, people who did my nails, I'm like, are you watching this? Yes. You know what I mean? And so that's, you know, I like that. That's the belongingness that if you guys went there, you could also get the same reaction and have the same closeness when you're talking about a K-drama that's everybody's watching. They were watching Queen of Tears when I was there. Everybody's talking about it. You would still see K-dramas playing in the old school restaurants. We would go into these side streets and see the current K-drama, like Flex X Cop was playing once, and I saw a whole episode as we were eating dinner. That's what they still do. So anyways, yeah, so I would say overall, yes to this question. Okay, let's move on. Thank you. You can ask questions in the chat box too. What K-drama do you recommend to someone who's never watched before? I do have some go-tos. So I always make it very clear that I do recommend the later dramas because they're just starting now or in the last 3-4 years. Then I want to recommend what's trending or what's in season because they might see an old drama, which I made the mistake of once because they were like, no, I love historical dramas. And I suggested an old one and they were like, I couldn't get through it. And then I was like, oops, that was their first one. So I try to win you over. So I do ask, what do you prefer? Because I'm not going to assume you like a rom-com. In fact, I know some women who are like, I don't know, I like action, some thrillers. So I'll actually say Vincenzo. Like I'll say Vincenzo's fun, but also so shows like a heartwarming community bonding and team building and all that stuff. And then I'll say Itaewon Class is a good one of somebody who's never been exposed to K-dramas. It shows everything, but also isn't as so lovey-dovey, but shows kind of like Korean culture and is, I would say, foreigner friendly. Does that make sense? Itaewon Class. And of course, if I'm like, you like rom-coms, Crash Landing. I mean, I'll go to that one just by data. It's like one of the top that got people into K-dramas today. So I always will recommend that. And by the way, I'll also recommend Lovely Runner. I did that recently. I go, do you have Vicky? They're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay. But if you want to consider Vicky, they're like, yeah, I'll get a new platform. Then I go Lovely Runner. Good way to start. So again, if you don't have Vicky, that's kind of hard, you know? By the way, Vicky cannot be played in Korea. It only can be played if you use your VPN or if you turn off the Wi-Fi. They don't have Vicky. They use TVN or TVing. So Lovely Runner was playing on TVing, the app, if you want to stream it, or live on TV, which I saw parts of it live. So they don't have Vicky. I'd like to share that. So people on my tours were like, wait, Jeannie, I can't watch Lovely Runner because that's how we were watching it at the time on Vicky. I go, turn off the Wi-Fi, use your VPN. And because obviously there's no screen subtitles when you're watching it live. So they have to watch it via Viki. So that's a little tip there. FYI, if you can't find your Viki K-dramas. Okay, next one. Those are the ones I recommend. The parental bullying in South Korea, there's actually several stories of that. So I will actually share about this. Teachers in Korea are at the utmost highest respect when I was growing up and even recently, but lately, because I want to say of parental stress, they're putting so much pressure on the teacher, a little more so. That's not healthy. So in some sense, not respecting the teacher as much as they used to. But do you know teachers get paid very well in Korea? That's why a lot of people sometimes consider teaching. Obviously, they would have to teach English if you're a foreigner, but they go through a lot of testing to get to where they want to be in teaching. You saw in Hagwon, Romance and Hagwon, how respectful they are in the sense of them teaching at these Hagwons. They're brilliant people. And so it is a very high-end career in Korea. And I hope it stays that way. But yes, there are some parents that under so much pressure to get their kids in something, they go way past the boundaries. Do you enjoy being an executive coach? I love being an executive coach. Yes, I'm a therapist by training, but as my whole global company grows, I'm doing a lot more executive coaching because that's what I can do, especially when I'm overseas based on my licensing as a therapist. But executive coaching, I always say, you have an executive coach, me, that is a secret weapon because I'm also a licensed therapist. So I understand any kind of emotions that you're talking about, I will point those out and bring them in and bring my expertise in clinically, though it's not therapy. And also executive coaching, I reach a lot more CEOs. And now in my career, I've gotten very bold. I feel like I look young for my age. So I have to say I'm my age. Do you know that many times the CEOs are looking at me like, I get that look. I walk into a workshop and I see their skepticism, and I'll even call it out going, okay, blank, you look very skeptical. What's going on? I can do that now. Maybe 10 years ago, I would have been a little like, oh gosh, they don't like me. Now I've got a lot more of that under my belt that I'm like, why are you looking that way? Let's talk about it. And even to a CEO, I don't care like if you're, well, okay, I'll be nice if you're the president. But even then, if you're high up, in fact, I want those people to talk to. I'm like, I want your CEO right now because I want to say this because your employees are burned out. And so I've gotten very bold to say, if you're not here and you're in executive leadership, then that's too bad because you guys hired me, but then I'm speaking to the choir. I need to speak to the leaders. So I have a lot more global and I guess overall reach when I'm an executive coach because I, can reach the workplace that way. So I love it. And secret weapon, yeah, I bring in K-drama examples. And I'm going to tell you now, I think I mentioned it. I got follow-up speaking events and requests based on my K-drama examples and BTS examples. Okay. Because that makes me stand out. I'm like, by the way, I'm going to give you an example of how BTS does such good storytelling. I use that a lot. And that's how people are like, wait a second. I remember this Asian woman who talked about this K-pop group I've heard of or that my kid loves. Do you know what I mean? And so that's what's so cool about my job. And now I'm much more bold that I go, oh, by the way, I have a book on K-dramas. So let me explain how I bring it into the workplace. And so I love that job as an executive coach. And that's exactly what it means. I work with executives. And so I've gotten very, 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 very firm. They'll still look at me like this. So, you look like a little girl. And I'm pretty petite. I'm 5 feet tall, but I wear heels in person. But I'm like, yeah, having 4 kids and being 50, I have to say that. But I don't mind saying that because I need them to know I have some experience under my belt and I'm of age to be able to talk to them. And then I'll even say, well, you hired me, I'll say that too. So I love it. Thanks for asking that. Next question. This is my favorite. I'm going to end on this before I get into some workplace things. Absolutely. Home, this is an American phrase. Home is where the heart is. You've heard it. It's very true. You don't necessarily need a physical home necessarily, but I'm going to say this. It can get old living out of a suitcase, living temporarily in hotels. You hear, I have lots of clients who are, executives that travel all over the world and country. It gets old. It's nice to come back to a home or a place you can call home. So even if it's not a home that you own or it's just yours or it's based in the US, like we have a home, that's okay. But I would actually suggest you call a home. You know why? Because that is why it's really important to me that I do have a home base. And I say this in Korea, that I feel blessed to have, and a home base here. But I want to continue that. We are becoming much more Seoul-based residents. And when I'm in Seoul, I'll be honest, I only miss our family and, wishing I was on East Coast time because I'm so sleep deprived, speaking at 3 a.m. But I don't necessarily miss the US. Does that make sense? I love being in Seoul when I'm in Seoul. It is 100% there. Like I forget, that it's Korea. You know what I mean? It's like I'm there and then I'm very engrossed in business. So that's how fun. Then I'm on my tours and that's so much fun, right? Tiring, but fun. But when I'm here, then I am 100% here. The only time I wish I was in Korea is when I'm doing these Zoom calls and at the time, right? But overall, I'm here more with family, that I see more family. I get to see some friends. Obviously, I was born in Seoul, raised here, the US, so it means a lot. So I call 2 homes. But I think overall, the 2 cultures, that's why I love this question. I don't talk about it enough. It is not easy juggling both my cultures in business. It is when you're traveling. And if I was just a tour person and if I was just visiting Korea, great. Some Korean Americans have shared that they've had some interesting experiences that are difficult. But I totally, you booked on the first, yay. Yes, you will. And that would be probably it's coming up soon. A couple months before your tour, we connect you guys. That's the whole point of Noona's Noonchi. Yes. So you will come in knowing everybody's name. Yeah. And then I have to learn everybody's name. But the 2 cultures can be difficult when I'm doing business. And so I'm going to go into now the workplace. How lately I wanted to start my own business in Korea. So we have a Noona's Noonchi company in Korea. And it's a legit company that we had to form to do these tours. That's a privilege. I don't really know many. I can't really think of any other Korean American doing that. They might have a startup, but I couldn't think of any, to tell you the truth. So I'm still investigating that. But why it gets hard is I'm still doing business in Korea. So there is a language barrier because I'm not 100% proficient in business, Korean business talk. And then there's also the cultural barrier, because even if I understand it pretty well, there's so many nuances that even my husband are like, okay, what did that mean? You know what I mean? And it's totally, what's the word? I have to catch it. Good thing I have Noonchi, which is checking things out quickly. I'd be like, okay, they just gave me a look when I said that, right? And I don't have that look per se so much in the US because I feel like I have a much more firm grasp on US. But even in the US, you're talking business and you're like, what are they saying? You know what I mean? Legal jargon, business jargon. So can you imagine when Korean language, even though it was my first language, and I've lost a lot of that initial proficiency because my mom said I spoke brilliant Korean and English when I was young in elementary school, lost it. Can you imagine when you're not proficient and they're talking business and you're like, okay, I understand what they're saying, but what are they really saying? So that's actually very difficult. And so that would be the whole conflict of the language barrier. And so I can kind of get a glimpse of what it's like to be an immigrant in a country, because I'm like, what did they just say? I understood it, but I don't even know what they're asking me, And that's really frustrating. There are times I get very frustrated internally. And then the cultural nuance. Koreans, I always like to say this, we learned this in the workplace. So I'm going to shift over now to the workplace series. And the fact that I work with my husband is such a blessing. That is the first thing I'm going to share. People, any of you guys work with your spouses? Some people don't work with their spouses. It can be hard and easy at the same time. But for me, it is actually very important. Do you know that my husband retired early from public school education to help me, but he wasn't going to. The first 2 tours I was going to go do on my own. And because I was like, I got this. And then last minute, we just because circumstances, it made sense for him to retire and then come with me, preliminarily check things out. Because he's like, let's just check it out. You never know, because it's your first time doing a tour. I'm so glad that he did, because it wasn't about just social support, because of course that's great. That's what I thought it would be about. It became a lot more about business support, because here's the reality. The reality is Korea, still patriarchal society. The K-dramas that you see are what people wish to happen in society that are slowly happening. But it's still dramatized when you see a woman like owning everything, you know? That's not necessarily the case. I am a female who is the CEO in title, and it is on my business card. And so there are times when, actually, first glance, people will assume Jonathan's the CEO, my husband. So they'll go, "Oh, Tepyonim," and I'm there, and I'll be like, just, and I'm going to say this, because I'm at my age, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me to the point of like where 10 years ago it bothered me. I'd be like, "Excuse me, it's me." Like I had something to prove. 10 years later, maybe I don't have much to prove, except I know I am. And so I'm like, I'll just wait. And I just know my husband's always good about saying, "You need to ask her. She's the CEO," right? Or she's the Tepyonim. Like, let her make the decision. He won't make it for me, even though he knows my answer. But there are times I will say, "Hey, honey, I think I need you to say something because they didn't listen to me." I'll be like, "I need you to say the same thing." And you would think that's irritating. But again, I choose not to let it get to me because I also understand the culture. So again, if that happened in the US, I'd be like, "Excuse me, no, I just told you something and I am the CEO. Listen," right? In Korea, it's different. Still not familiar for, also, I'm a Korean American. So I come across very Western too, because of my mannerisms, and I'm like this, and they're like, "Oh, she's very loud," right? And that's actually appreciated, but also at the same time that there's that fine line where I have to be very businesslike, and I can do that in the US, but it's different in Korea. So then I get my husband to say the same thing, because I've said some things going, "Here it is." It's actually what people encounter in the US too. And then my husband will come in and say the same thing, and they'll do it. So you may think that's irritating, but that is the reality. And that is the Korean culture that I want to respect. So, because I'm also doing business there, and that's a privilege to do that. So I'm very clear on bringing in the Korean, the best part of the Korean, the best part of the US. There are times I downplay that Western thought to understand the Korean thought. And there's a lot of learnings, even with my staff. I'm like, "So what did you mean? Tell me exactly what you mean." And I'm looking at them, and they're like, "Oh, they're not used to that." In the K-dramas, you see them expressive, and all this stuff. Some of that is kind of more internal, like you'll do that with your friends. But if you have a CEO like me going, "I need to know whether you're okay," you know what I mean? In the US, you get that. Not in Korea, so they still won't tell me. There are times I'm like, I didn't know that something stressed them out, and I'll hear about it secondhand, and I'll be like, "I think I asked him 5 times," or my husband will also ask him 5 times, "Hey, is this okay for you?" And they'll be like, "Yes." Right? That's the Korean way. Very hospitable. And then we'll find out it stressed him out. And that's why I'm like, in order for us to just have that transparency, it's okay. If I'm asking you, I literally mean it's okay that you tell me, "No, this is not good." And so I think I have to keep doing that. And that can be tiring, because I'm like, "Didn't I just ask you this question and you said it's okay, but then I found out it's not?" So I'll call them out on it, going, I think I told you many times to tell me and not go here, because at the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to be able to help you, So I'll say it like that without being too authoritarian, It's authoritative is the word. So those are the dynamics that I don't necessarily get in the US. It's actually a little bit more black and white, but so someone's saying a third culture kid, born from one culture, raised in a different country, never completely fitting into either country or culture, but trying hard to fit into both. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great way of wording how I feel. But I will say, when I'm in Seoul, I will be like a Korean, obviously as best as I can, bringing Jeannie Chang into it. I will do everything I can to uphold that. But then I also say to the Korean staff, I'm running a global company. So you are going to see things done more global, because my customers are global. And so they understand that. And so there are some things that they've had to learn from me or from us to pivot. And so I'm very, 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 very comfortable in saying, I'm proud that I'm doing business in Korea and I'm benefiting Korean economy. I always say that. And it's based in Korea, and we have a license in Korea. But also, you have to understand my customer base, and you have to also understand that I have to think of our clients and what I want. And when it comes to K-dramas and mental health, like, I feel like in some expertise, that is my expertise. So I'm going to dictate that. I've said that, in a very nice way. And so they respect it. But I have to be a lot more firm in a lot of cases than I would want to be. No, they do not look down upon Jonathan. I think, and that's my Noonchi. I mean, maybe behind their back they're saying stuff, but no, from the gatherings, they will still talk to him like he's the CEO. If anything, they look down on me as a female, or being like, she seems kind of bossy. I've seen some looks going, is Jeannie going to be a little bossy here? But we get that in the US too. As a leader, I've seen lots of executives, female executives, tell me that when they speak up, they get looked at, down upon as, okay, there she is being bossy. So maybe some of you relate, but we got to do it. And so I have a thicker skin because of my husband, actually, because it's my husband by my side, you know. But I will still, as you guys know, the workplace stress I went through, I did a lot of that myself, trying to be strong because I'm trying to take care of you guys. But no, they don't look down upon him at all. They still gravitate to him. He still gets the best friend. He's called Hyung, you know, he's called a lot more things, a lot more, you know, chummy people. Koreans are very chummy. They have a lot of chung. So they love being able to call you Hyung and Noona, you know, and one of the CEOs calls me that because I am older, and I accept it because I warmly accept it because that's their closeness. He's running a company too, and kind of technically I'm his client, but he'll say Noona this, Noona that. That's the chung that you don't get technically in our culture too, in the US, right? That is there in Korea. You see it in the K-dramas. That's all legit. That's actually what holds me there when I'm like, this chung that you feel, that we feel, is so good. And so that is how they also do business. And so when I see them talking to my husband that way, because there's a lot more men, I don't know any women leaders I deal with. I'm trying to think. No, in the tourism industry, all men. Women I've dealt with, I've seen in other like networking events, which I love. But in my immediate circle and in all the vendors I work with, male. So I love it when they feel close to my husband to say hyung, or they're on the same length, and they'll be very, you know, chummy is the English word, the American word for it. They have that chung. And no, not looked down upon at all. But yeah, I am. I think I'm looked down upon, you know, going, why are you telling me this? There was this instance on the October tour. People saw it where like someone said no to me, and I was like, okay, but I'm like, but I really want to do this. And I was thinking, and I wasn't thinking like a CEO, I was thinking like a female with this picture. And then my husband realized what was happening, that he didn't know I was the CEO, and just said no, saying, kind of going with the rules. But it was really neat when they're like, well, my husband's like, well, she is the, you know, CEO, you want to, and then they were like, oh my God. So I like the reaction, like, of course we could take like 5 pictures. That was cute. Just like you see in the K-dramas, they do cater that way. Yes. When you indicate that's the case, right? And that happened to be a very obvious example that everybody saw, that then he gave me an extra frame and all this stuff, because I just wanted another picture in my home book. That's all it was. I wasn't being demanding, but that's the hard part, and thankful. And I'm going to keep going with the workplace, but overall, I feel very blessed to work with my husband. Totally blessed. I can't do it without him. And I've had some fellow women colleagues that are like, Jeannie, but don't you want to not depend on him? I go, I think it's actually good to depend on your team. You have to be able to trust them. That's what I teach, right? That's the belongingness. It's very lonely to do it yourself. Ain't no way I could do it by myself, you know? And so I'm thankful he's there. And then I can even be pretty blunt going, did you just see that? That was really rude, right? If I'm upset about something. But a lot of the cases that, when you saw my live, I was very emotional on this live a few weeks ago. A lot of the cases happened to me because I spoke up, spoke out, spoke like a CEO, and said, this is how it's going to be done. This is what I want. Or you made this mistake. I pointed out mistakes, and I got, you know, viciousness in return. That takes its toll, and nobody was around me. It was like one-on-one conversations. I was like, I should have recorded that. You shouldn't do that. But because I wasn't taken seriously because I was a female, right? And my personality changes. By the way, I'm a different person. No one's ever going to see it, actually. But if you saw me, because I'm not going to show you this, but if someone makes a mistake, I keep that no smile face, and I showed anger, and I actually purposely showed anger, going, you know what? No, this made me mad. You made a mistake. I just said something. You didn't tell me this, right? And so that's another part of the Koreanness. It's hard to say no to something. It's hard to say you can't do something. Koreans always want to be able to say, yes, I can do this. So that's another thing I say. If you can't do it, A-okay. We're American. We're like, you tell us if you can't do something, we will accept it and then try to find another way. But in Korean culture, if you say you can't do something, it's accepted in a different way, right? And so that's why some of my relatives get very surprised when I'm going, oh, I didn't call. Oh, you wanted us to call you? You know, they think it's really rude if we don't call them. I couldn't call you because I'm super busy. I think I said that once, and I saw my aunt go, did she just say she's super busy to me? And then I went, oops, that was a little cultural nuance. I shouldn't have done it that way. but I was kind of half joking, you know, I'm so busy doing these tours and that's really real. And that's why I didn't call you. But they took it as like, you know, you were supposed to make that effort. So no matter how busy you are, you do it. That's the Korean culture. So I understand that. Thank you. Yes, it is. He's got, actually, I'm telling you, his introvertedness has gotten better because the stamina that he has now for the tours, I'll watch him going, wow, you have a lot of energy, because it used to exhaust him. As an introvert, you're exhausted when you're around all these people, right? You need to regroup on your own. He's gotten a lot better with that. And sometimes I need to regroup now because I'm always like there for you guys. So we are a good match. Okay, so that concludes the first launch of the Workplace series. I will have more to say, but let's go to the deep dives. And thank you for sticking with me. Oh, sorry, K-News Talk. Sorry about that. Thank goodness for my producer. Korea is making moves toward talking more about mental health. I think it's wonderful. I'm seeing so much more, I would say, policies or people trying to put things in place in the government. And I want to start with that is tremendously a big deal than even a year ago. And even a year ago, when I talked about what I do, the response was kind of neutral than what it is today. A lot more people are fascinated by what I do and much more interested, which means mental health is on people's minds. This is an article about suicide prevention and how they're, you know, requiring it in schools. So, or to students. Here's why I have a little bit of a problem with that, actually. On the first face level, it's good. But at the end of the day, suicide prevention is advanced, meaning when you talk about suicide, by then you're talking about many mental health conditions that have led to that point. And I would actually want them to go from the beginning and say, let's talk about mental health and what it is in the schools. So I'm saying this here because I want to be very clear that just because they're talking more about mental health and putting all these policies, that doesn't mean they're effective. Like sometimes they're like Band-Aids. Let's put it on the cut, but you got to like, you know, disinfect the cut, right? Or you got to make sure that you're keeping the cut clean and then the Band-Aid protects it. A Band-Aid is very temporary. And so I feel like the suicide prevention, I have to see what it looks like. But I do think overall that could have come secondary or even third. What comes first is mental health education. Do kids even know what the word depression? I think they know what it is, but then an image of depression is very, very somber. Depression could be, you know, you're feeling a certain way because things are stressful at home. You know, it could be a very life stressor thing that is normal. And I don't quite even see that education. So that's my desire. And that's my 2 cents, because that's kind of what I do. And so suicide prevention is very advanced. And I feel like they're not quite ready for that. So let's see what that looks like. Even in the US, we don't have suicide prevention necessarily embedded in the schools, but we do have things like wellness and health. And I see more and more of that. That's very important. It can always be more, but I still think I would say the US is decades far advanced than Korea with mental health, just because psychology is a new field in Korea. We have decades of psychology in the US and Europe, right? That's where it stems from. Korea, Asia, very much behind. So they're going to eventually catch up, but I feel like Korea's trying to catch up too fast. That's my 2 cents. So I want them to slow down and start from the beginning. And if they're talking education, then start from the beginning and educate starting in kindergarten, which we do here. You know, we have here smiley faces. How are you feeling today? Smile, sad face, right? Those are the basics of mental health, how you're feeling. So that's K-News Talk, and that's my 2 cents on that. And like I said, I feel like I have a lot to say on that because I interact with more and more people. People based in Korea are on my team. So I will, of course, be concerned with their mental health. Okay, so let's go on to a deep dive. Atypical Family. If you're here, tell me if you saw Atypical Family. Just put yes or no. And I would say overall, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's not like I thoroughly enjoyed it avidly. You know, many of the K-dramas I deep dive, I absolutely loved. I watched this one because a lot of you guys mentioned it, and then something kept me going. Gosh, no one's responding, so maybe you didn't see Atypical Family. But I do recommend it. It's on my list of K-dramas I recommend for 2024 because it does a good job of showing a dysfunctional family. And again, it's very much a fantasy. They have superpowers. And a lot of people's superpowers, they're all gone. They're all struggling with them at the start of the K-drama because of what they say is in Korean it was pyong, like illness, in some sense mental illness, right? Not physical illness, but they all have these superpowers and they're talking about they're all going through their own struggles because of this illness. Now, what they're referring to is, I want to say, mental health conditions. Not necessarily mental illness, though the main character, Chang Gi-yong, did show signs of, say, borderline alcoholism and depression from grief. And so he must have been in that state for a while because that's what it shows. So he would probably be diagnosed with major depression, mental illness. But I'm talking about my connection of, that's okay that they said they lost their superpowers because of this illness. But here's why I don't like it, because I think the very thing it does is stigmatizes it. So in the beginning, you see the teenage girl going, we have superpowers, but we lost the superpowers because of the translation directly is modern lifestyle diseases. To label depression because of grief, because you lost your beloved wife as a disease is, I would say, stigmatizing. And pyong is that kind of stigmatizing word. I wish it was something like he's very depressed, like just be very like obvious that it's depressed, you know? And that's why he can't do his superpower of going back in the past. He actually does go back in the past. And so that's the irony part. He actually had his superpowers the whole time. But my whole point is the overall arching premise is people's own traumas and how they relate to a family that is atypical because they have superpowers, but also they're consumed with, the mother's consumed with those superpowers and doesn't even look at her own kids. There's a famous line in there, I think it's famous, where what was right under my nose, I didn't see. You hear that a lot. People don't respect their own relationships, even though they have them. You know what I mean? It's like you have somebody who's trying to be your friend and you just ignore them because you have other priorities, but you missed the very thing that mattered. And that was what happened in the K-drama with the teenage girl and the mother. And that was probably one of the most poignant things, but also things like the fact that you have these superpowers that kind of, I would say maybe they're, let's just say they're a metaphor to something. And then you have these mental health conditions. I'm going to reword it, not modern lifestyle diseases, mental health conditions because of things you've gone through, your own trauma. There was eating disorder or binge eating. You're clearly seen in, a famous model actress, that what I did like was that she worked hard to lose weight, which you can do, because she knew she was unhealthy. And then there was some criticism on, okay, so now she's going to go back to being skinny and that's when her life, and that's when she'll fly. And that's exactly what happens. She gets thin again and is able to fly. But I'm going to reframe that. She works hard to lose her weight because she's miserable because of that, and not miserable because of other people. Other people made fun of her. She lost relationships and all that stuff, but she lost her confidence because of that. And that's why you want to feel better and look better. That's how we reframe it. It's important. It's not about looks, but you want to be healthy, and then you want to look healthy. And when you do, you feel good. So that's why I want to connect to that. So she started gaining confidence as she got her old model self back, because she was a model. And then she was able to fly. But she was able to fly not because she was thin. And that might have been what people interpret it. I interpret it as she lost weight, worked hard at it. You saw her being a little crazy. And in some sense, that compulsion to work out craziness, I've seen that too in real life where it's not healthy. And you saw that. And so I thought that was well done, showing how crazy she went to lose weight to the point of hurting herself, like as in not self-harm, hurting herself as in collapsing or fainting, right? And then, but then she started being able to fly again because she found the confidence because she lost weight. So I want to say it came with first building confidence, believing in you, who you are. A lot of you guys talked about self-love. Yeah, she was self-loathing herself, eating all this and knowing it, but kept going. It's a way of comforting, actually, right? But then that self-control and self-confidence came about, and that's how she started flying. So yeah, a lot of people loved her character. She was a very poignant character. Him also, Chang Gi-yong's character found solace in the girl who is also atypical, you'll see, who didn't have the best of intentions, but somehow they also healed each other. So you see that, and she had her own trauma. But I also loved the dynamics of her kind of bad family. That's all I can say. Just not so pure family, trying to kind of maneuver the main family, if that makes sense, without me giving too much away. I liked it overall for its messages, if you grasp the right messages, but I know many people stopped it. I took my time with it because I was like, oh my goodness. But I think it really got good episode 8 and on, where you started seeing the healing. But in the beginning, it was like a little bit of a mess. But that's okay, because that's how I love seeing like things like My Mister. You keep going, and then you see their transformation. I think all of them were transformed, even the bad family members. That's the end of the day, how K-dramas can transform your life. My book, I saw it in that K-drama where he was transformed through his own acceptance of the grief and his own guilt and shame. And then obviously building relationship with the main girl, right? She also finds her own family, which she didn't have. And there's transformation there. And then there's transformation in, like, I guess the mom that's a bad mom that I didn't expect to see. I actually thought they would stay kind of who they are, but they were transformed through this family. You love seeing that. That's all real life. Do you know what I mean? Now, obviously not in the superpower way and all this stuff, but people can transform each other. And that's what I see on my tours. I want to share that with you. On my tours, I see people transforming each other. It's not about me transforming you. You already come knowing me. And then it becomes about you with other people and seeing these sights, right? And that's the transformation I saw in Atypical Family. And then the girl, lastly, who did a great job acting, disconnect with her father, who was just consumed with grief since she was a little girl. She lost her mom. He lost his wife, and finally getting to know her, right? And again, you know, a child can be I guess, a very sad reminder of something you've lost. You know that in real life, someone can remind you of that, and it can be sad. So he was dealing with that grief, and I saw his grief throughout. It consumed him, but what healed him actually was that relationship with the female lead, but also diverting attention, because she was really good about bringing in the other family members. You know, her little posse of bad family members brought in the other good family members to his limelight, to his sight, if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is he saw his own family for the first time around him, and they all had not so good relationships because that superpower got in the way. Here's what I'm going to say: this superpower can also equate to your own vices. Like, maybe you're a workaholic. Maybe all you want to do is become this, you know, you're so so ambitious that you kind of ignore your own family. I think it's really important that you can be ambitious, but you can't ignore your family, right? You got to do your best to have that family life, or I will say it's going to hit you one day and you'll be left alone. That sounds so dramatic, but that's kind of what was happening with the mom. She was so consumed that she could see the future. She could see the future. So let's just say she's like the CEO of this company, and that was all about building her empire and seeing the future and changing the world. She ignored her own husband, right? So you ignore what's in front of you. Her granddaughter, she thought was, I think she said it was kind of a bad phrase where she's like, you don't even have a superpower, but the girl, it's not a spoiler alert, has, I would say, really strong superpowers that you see that she just kept hidden. She didn't make her superpowers define her. Does that make sense? But she had them. And then it became, I would say, a way of her building confidence, not leaning on them, but she was actually probably the best example of a healthy individual that tried to get through life, even though she was grieving and feeling the shame, and you see her break down. So I loved her character. She was probably my favorite, even though she wasn't even the main character. She was an example of what you want to be like. You have the superpower. You're not going to let it define you, and you're going to keep it hidden and then when you need to use it, you can. So think of your own skills. You know, don't let it define you. Like, just because you're like a best-selling author, it's you. Jeannie Chang, I'm a great speaker, it's defining me. No, because that's only one aspect of my life. And that's kind of what the girl did. That's one aspect of her life. And she wanted to be friends with people. She wanted to have a boyfriend. She liked this guy. Does that make sense? So all your relationships matter. So I really like this one overall, but I will only rewatch certain scenes, but it's not the most exciting, right? And it's totally okay. It's totally okay if you don't finish it, but I do recommend it if you can get through it. Has some good life lessons. Okay, and then I'm going to end on my final deep dive. It is Sweet Mobster, My Sweet Mobster. Who's watching this one? This is good. I'm going to actually say something. I think I'm enjoying it more than Lovely Runner. I loved Lovely Runner. It was super cute, but I'm relating more to this one, maybe because of the age, and they're adults. You don't have high schoolers per se. And I think that matters, because it does matter to the demographic. And I think it's really, really important that this one shows their former gangsters turned a new leaf. I love the communal living. It's a classic K-drama trope that someone lives with somebody because they don't have housing. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And then they get close and fall in love. I love that trope though, because you see the house and they have their own family. Now, this sweet mobster guy does have a family. He does have a father. It's somebody he wants to disconnect with. So I'm sure we're going to see that come back in the next couple of episodes to start a new life. And he started a new life with his former gangster team who all live together and they're very loving people and they love the girl. You know, the typical trope. But that's really that's nice to see. Healthy, happy. And I actually probably love their interactions just as much as the romantic interactions because theirs is really cool. And it's important to see that, to see people know each other and defend each other and stuff like that. And actually, there's some side stories of like side leads and their romance, which is actually fascinating and very progressive too. So I highly recommend it. I binged to catch up. I binged it last week or something to catch up because I had 8 episodes and now I'm all caught up and it's really good. And if you want something fun, just watch it. It's fun. And it's a simple romance, has all the tropes. Yes. On that note, tropes are necessary for our storytelling, for our comfort level, for all of that. So it's just something easy to watch because it has the tropes. And actually every K-drama has some sort of trope, whether you want to admit it or not, you know, and that's in my book. Yes, Miss Day and Night, I did start it. I think, yeah, they're good bad boys, right? And we all love those, the good bad boys. Miss Day and Night, yeah, no, I actually like it too. I think I'm on episode 4. It's cute. And people talk a lot about ageism in that one. On that note, ageism is so real, not so much in the US and maybe in other cultures, you let me know. But in Asian culture, it's all about the age. You could be only 6 months older and they'll make a big deal going, oh, I'm 6 months older than you. And I know this for a fact that someone was talking, and I'm gonna end on this note. Someone was, and My Sweet Mobster, you know how they call her Hyungsnim, sister-in-law? That's another reason why I love this show. The terminology is very endearing. That means they got close to her. So even more than Noona, they were calling her sister-in-law. Hyungsnim, that's what my husband calls his sister-in-law, Hyungsnim, his brother's wife. So that term, I hear that, and culturally it's very heartwarming. But I'm going to end on this note where the ageism with Miss Day and Night, which you kind of see, is very real because I think I do come across young, and I think Koreans tend to look young, but I don't seem like I'm 50. I think when people are talking to me and someone's talking to me, I'm like, clearly they think I'm younger than them because of the way they're talking to me. And so I have a little bit of Koreanness in me when I go, so I think you're talking to me like I'm 35, but you know, I'm actually not your age. I'm older. And then you see their demeanor they go, oh my goodness, so you're Noona or you're Noonim? That's so true. And I'm bringing that up because in Miss Day and Night, you kind of see a little bit of that. The age is just part of the culture. It can appear kind of hoity-toity, but that's what they have. And it's very much part of the whole Korean culture of like, I'm older, I'm wiser, right? So I pull that on some people. I'm like, you know what? When it's due, I will pull on this Korean age stuff. I go, I think I'm older than you. And then their demeanor 100% switched. And now it's like, okay, so what do you need? And that's not what I was looking for, but I just felt like he was disrespecting, like I'm talking down to me, and then I'll bring that in. So I had to end it on that note because I'm like, let me bring in my age here. Yeah, I am your Noona. I'm your Noonim. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. This is going to be recorded, so those who couldn't make it, hello, shout out to you. I will see you again soon. If you have any last minute questions, you know where to reach me, but I am so thankful for my community. And if you're coming on my tours, we're going to have so much fun. The remaining 3, and next year, watch out. You know, I try to, okay, so maybe this is the Korean. I'm trying to up my game. So we're going to be